Hello, my name is David Swanik. This is my group dynamics take-home test, and I will be talking about a group that is hockey teams. And I will be talking about, during my lifetime, different types of hockey teams and how they relate to being in different types of groups. So when you look at groups, there's two types of group. There's a primary group and a social group. I played on two types of hockey teams. Primary group being like a competitive hockey team, so you stuck together, you're really striving towards a goal of winning that championship. Then I would say the social group would be more like my men's league, where people come in every week. We play for fun. We don't really care if we win or lose. It's just see the guys, have a beer after the game, and have a good time. And it's the same kind of thing with the intramurals at Sheridan. Run a bunch of students. We socialize. We play for fun. There's no real competition. It's just for fun. When you look at a competitive team, when I played competitively, it was we got to win at every moment. It was very structured. We had the time it was formed where the coach decides who it is, and then there's the storming where everybody kind of tries to figure out who's who, like who's the best player, who's the best defenseman, who works well with other people, and you kind of find your role within the group. Like, are you going to be the guy who plays the most in power play and penalty kill, or are you going to be the guy that doesn't play very often but brings energy to the team? That's the big part of storming in a more competitive group. While as like a men's league or intramurals, the storming part doesn't really apply as much because people are just playing for fun. So it doesn't really matter who you play with. You're playing for fun. Once you kind of establish where you are in norming, and this usually happens within 3/4 of the way through the season, for competitive teams at least, is you've determined where you fit in the lineup per se in sports terms. Are you going to be playing the top minutes, or are you going to be not playing the top minutes? The coach has kind of established a structure. You have a system in place. You play, the 2-1-2 or the 3-1-1. It's all established. And then the performing part, which is always very difficult for sports teams because they expect you to, at least in competitive, to play well every game, even though sometimes you may be hurt or you may be tired and you just may not feel like playing at your top level of performance. And that's why you really got to focus on completing good practices, keeping consistent, listening to what they're saying, and listening to your coaches. So I will now talk a bit about diversion and conversion thinking. So I had two different types of coaches. When I played in Toronto for a team called the Toronto Avalanche, we had a coach who was very divergent thinking. He didn't believe in having other coaches help him. He wanted to be the only one, which was very different for a hockey team. You usually have three coaches. You got the coach that deals with the defensemen, the forwards, and then the head coach. He didn't believe in that. He just wanted to be the one coach. And he also didn't believe on having more players. So our team, usually a hockey team, is you got 15 to 20 players. And our team had 12. He believed in having the few players, but that were good, and giving them more quantity. Now, unfortunately, that didn't end up working very well. We were very bad and terrible. We lost a lot of games, and it caused a lot of issues within the team. Because what happened was, in competitive hockey at least, parents, play a role in kind of telling their kids, be happy or whatnot. And the parents were mad at the coach because they thought he was doing a bad job. Then the kids were getting mad because the parents were mad, and it was just not a good scenario. Then there was a bunch of conflict, and then they actually ended up compromising by adding another coach because the parents were super mad that there was one coach, and they thought there should be more. So the coach ended up compromising, and we got another assistant coach to help us. Then I'll look at more of a conversion thinking. So one year I played for a team called West Mall Lightning, and we were one of the best teams in the league. And the reason we were so good was because it was super structured. It was very, like, from the beginning, from the first week, we knew who was where. So the forming stage was pretty straightforward. Because the team had been together for many years, it wasn't a big new forming stage, because basically every year they redo the teams. They cut some players, they add new players. But sometimes when the team is good, they'll just keep the majority of the players. So it was already formed. So you kind of skip the forming and storming stage of creating a group. So all we really need to do was really fix the minor details. So just the structure of how we played, or the norming phase or performing phase. So it saved us a lot of time, because in a season you really only have 5 to 6 months. So if you can skip those 2 stages, you're ahead of your competitors. And that year, my coach was a very good coach. So he was very goal oriented. He gave each individual player a goal. Like, this is what you need to improve on. This is how you can help our team. This is how we can win with you. And he also tried to get us to get to know each other more. So instead of just practicing and playing hockey, he tried to do events. So we went to do a gym session with one of the kids' moms. So we went to a gym and we all interacted with each other and got to socialize and get to know each other better. So then when we played hockey, we were more friends than we were before. So that made us more comfortable and or perform better. He'd also kind of looked at our behaviors. So he'd see, okay, this person doesn't talk much, so I won't be as vocal with him in the room. So let's say one of the players talks all the time. He would make a joke and say, "Oh, Tommy, stop talking," or like, just to try to lighten up the mood, because he could evaluate the room and determine who was who and use his conversion thinking. Then we kind of look at the group flow. So a flow of a hockey team, it really depends on what the goal is. With a men's league team, it doesn't really matter what happens. At the end of the day, you're just there to have fun. So the flow of the team, and there's really rarely any conflict in the team. There's no anger, there's no performance anxiety, there's none of that. It's more of a just, once it's established and you're norming, so you know what person does what. Like my goalie's going to play goalie. He's not going to switch positions. My defenseman's going to play defenseman. And they're going to play with the same people over and over again because they've been playing together for 15, 20 years. So they just kind of, the flow of the team stays the same. There's no real conflict. There's no problems. While as in a competitive team, when it's not going well, when you're losing, there's tons of conflict. And that causes a lot of issues and anxiety and problems. But when your team is doing really well and you're winning, then you have a scenario where you feel your personal identity, your social identity, you feel, more confident. So I'll give you an example. When I was playing house league, or not competitive, we had a team that was very, very good that year. It was the best, most fun year I've ever had, because we were having so much fun winning, and everybody got along so well together. We were almost like a family. We were a unit that was unified, and we had a goal. So myself became kind of like the team, very positive, outgoing, like excited to play. Everybody was happy all the time. There was never any people sad. Everybody was joking around, having a good time. When I was on the losing team, it was the opposite. Everybody was depressed. Everybody was sad. It was just the personal identity, the social identity of the team was just depression and sadness. It was just, you just felt like you weren't good enough. And that's never a good feeling. And that's what kind of happens with sports. If you see, in any sport, when a player is doing well, performing, you will see his more confidence. So you'll see after the game, he'll be more upbringing, like he'll be more happy. His social identities, his social cues, his personal identity, he'll smile, he'll be laughing. When they're losing, it's the complete opposite. They want to shoot somebody. They're sad. They're like, "Oh my God, stop asking me questions." So that's kind of the personal identity that you kind of get within a team. I'll go back to the resource group idea engine. So when it comes to ideas in sports, it's a little harder than with other things, because it's not you that necessarily decides, the coach. So you can give ideas to the coach, but the coach is the boss. He's the leader of the group. He determines everything that happens. So there's not as much willingness for ideas. But let's say my Sheridan team, the tournament team, there was, because our coach was a soccer coach. So she didn't really have, she had no hockey experience. So she was there more to watch us. So it was really interesting to see how the group, every player could give their input, because we were just kind of playing together, and we had a common goal of winning a championship for the Sheridan team, but we didn't have a leadership. So we didn't have a defined leader. And what did happen was our captains, per se, they were trying to be leaders, but they weren't our best players. And usually your best players are kind of your leaders. But the problem was, because they weren't our best players, they tried to be our best players, which you can't really do unless you are our best players. So they created a lot of conflict, because they wanted to do things, but people didn't trust them because they didn't think they were good enough. And that's kind of happens in sports is you trust the people that are better than you because you're like, they're better than me, so I should listen to them and thus make me better and the team better. So that's what caused a lot of conflict in our team. And the way that we actually kind of resolved that was we got two former Sheridan students who used to play hockey, and they became our coaches, and then they were able to structure our team and thus make our team a little more functional. This was my take at home test. If you have any questions, feel free to call me or ask me questions, but thank you again. Have a good day.